Hello. Today I have with me Lakshmi Murdeshwar Puri, former ambassador and Assistant General Secretary, United Nations. Welcome, ma'am. Ma'am, you had joined Indian Foreign Service in 1974. I would like to start this interview by asking how has the Indian Foreign Service changed since then? What is your take on that?
Well, I've always believed that the Indian Foreign Service is one of the most evolved and progressive services in the world, both in terms of having admitted people from all backgrounds, but also in terms of women getting an opportunity for their participation and leadership in foreign policy making and representing India in foreign countries abroad and managing India's relationships with the world. So it's always been ahead of its times in many ways. But also, of course, it began from the perspective of women. It began as being very restrictive. Women were not, once they joined foreign service, they were not allowed to marry. They had to resign, or they were not given equal foreign allowance if they went as a couple. Many of these things changed very quickly. Also, they have been very supportive in terms of enabling women officers to combine family life and work, and tandem couples like mine. I am a tandem couple because my husband he's also the same batch of foreign service. So both of us were enabled to be posted together as much as possible in the same place, because if that had not been possible, it would have put perhaps too much of a strain on our family ties, I know remote relationships are today very much the norm, but it has been, even then it has been difficult, but it was made possible because of the very progressive policies of trying to accommodate couples, foreign service couples, in the same place for posting. As far as India's foreign policy is concerned, I have written so much about this that we are, without calling it that, we have evolved into a ministry, and that's what has changed now. Very actively, we are projecting India as a Nari Shakti foreign policy, the feminist foreign policy, and which means that we are taking in more and more women. Of course, there is a limitation on that, because unless you have a quota, the intake will depend on how many women are successful in the competitive exams, like me, who got, all of us get in through competitive exams, who opt for the foreign service. That's the other thing. And also, but there is a lot that otherwise you can do, as I mentioned, to make sure that women are attracted to join the foreign service, they stay in the foreign service, they are promoted, they are given important roles, not only soft roles, but also hard security, and also, difficult roles. Like I was in Sri Lanka during one of the most tumultuous periods, 84 to 88. We have to be able to tap the leadership of women, and so that is happening more and more. And now with the G20 summit that was held and India's G20 presidency, we have really become a global advocate for women-led development, for Nari Shakti being reflected in every walk of life and every sector of the economy, and then now the Women's Reservation Bill has also given us a moral standing in the world, because not many countries, even the Western democracies, don't have this kind of a quotas now that has been set, which is a temporary special measure, which is needed to make sure that women participate equally in leadership and decision making. So I think I've always believed that the Ministry of External Affairs is a reflection of what we are at home and is meant to reflect that into the world. So I think we are doing that very well, especially in terms of Nari Shakti foreign policy.
Ma'am, very nicely put. And you just kept on saying about Nari Shakti, and it's actually the representation of Nari Shakti nowadays. I would like to go to my next question by asking that do you think that the participation of women in politics over the years has seen it has taken a good precedence, but do you think that it has taken a lot of, has the participation increased manifold?
You see, at different levels, there are different levels of progress. At the village and Jila Parishad levels, there has been an exponential increase thanks to the quota system that was introduced, 33%, but then in many states, you have 50% reservation. So, women's participation in governance at the village and district levels has really gone up. And we have more than, I think, 1.5 million or so women leaders at the village and Jila Parishad levels as panches and sarpanches and Jila Parishad heads, and now that because of that reservation, they have been able to now even contest elections to these bodies on their own. And I have worked when I was with UN Women, we had a project to train these women leaders. And I met so many of them who would say that पहले हम कोटा से आई थी, अब हम मर्दों को हरा देती हैं अपने बलबूते पे.
Good way to take the nation forward.
Absolutely. So that level has been taken care of. But what is lacking is in the state assemblies and in the parliament, we don't have enough representation. We are still quite low. It's as low as 14%, 15%. We are hovering in that bracket. So we need to make that leap now at the state and parliament level.
So according to you, what should be done to encourage women to take this leap?
Well, I think the women's reservation bill that has been passed and under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi is going to be a game changer. You will see that a whole new movement towards the voice, participation and leadership of women in the legislative assemblies of the states and the parliament will now be possible and will be, एक आवेग आएगा और लहर उमड़ेगी. And but we also need women to be ready. Women need to be trained. Women's constituencies will need to be built. And political parties have to change their political culture. Because I think they have traditionally been patriarchal. And that is changing, but it is not enough. And so we have to start working now for 2029. When that big change will come and we'll have 33%. And by the way, 33% is the critical mass that is needed. The target is parity, 50%.
So ma'am, with this thought, are you planning to take your husband's footsteps?
No, into politics, no.
Why not?
No, I'm not made for politics. And also, it's been a lifetime of working in diplomacy, and I have moved into a very enticing world of literature. So that is my new vocation, and I'm very happy that one person in the family is doing Desh Seva in this way. I would like to do it in another way, and that's what I have chosen.
With that thought, let's move on to your book, which, according to me, is being said as a very powerful book, The Swallowing Sun. Even the title is so strong. Please tell us something about your book.
Well, this book, this novel, is inspired by my parents' life, but it's not a biography. It is fiction, and it is set against the tumultuous political and social ferment of the early 20th century, from 1918 to 1950. So it's an epic saga about young people in that time, a time of great change and transformation, a time when a freedom struggle was being waged, and these young people were very much involved in it. A time when there was a civilizational awakening happening. A confidence was building that हम भी कुछ थे और हम भी कुछ हैं और एक भारतवर्ष था. So, और भारतवर्ष है. Or from there, how to proceed to a modern nation state, unified nation state of India. That reimagining was happening. And these young people were part of it. The other aspect is, from my novel, is I also wanted to bring to the fore, and I think very few writers have done that, brought the beauty, the depth, and the many colors of Marathi literature, culture, theatre, music, poetry, all of that into the larger world, to the rest of India, but also to the larger world. Because at that time, as it was happening in Bengal, as it was happening in North India with Hindi, there was a literary renaissance happening. And our languages were flourishing. So this cultural renaissance also was very important to show, because it acted as, whether it is the Abhangas, and I'll come to the title in a minute, whether it is the Abhangas or the poems or the anthems that were being written, everything became a soul force for the freedom struggle, for the civilizational awakening. So that is, but it's also very much a very moving and inspiring. I think people have found the central character, which is modeled after my mother's life, to be very inspiring as a story of Nari Shakti, of women's empowerment. 100 years ago, what was attempted in order to free them from child marriage, from child motherhood and early death, and to put them onto a path of education, of finding themselves, of choosing their own careers. So they become pioneering graduates from Elphinstone College, from coming from a rural area in Maharashtra. They go on to go to Elphinstone College, then law college, then they become lawyers, and how she then defends freedom fighters. So that is her journey, and then also showing how women and men at that time also found a way to interact with each other beyond the familial context. Not the bird cage kind of depiction of women. So the women I show are phenomenal women who break boundaries and who do unconventional things. They make choices themselves, who they want to be, who they want to love, who they want to marry 100 years ago. So that's also something very novel and interesting for today's young people. So it's very much a book, a novel for it's an epic love story between Malti and Guru. And it also shows how men in that era could be enlightened, could be he for she's, you know. So Guru is, and then I bring out this concept of Ardhanarishwar, how there is in all of us, each one of us, there is the Purush element and there is the Nari element. And therefore, and they are in equilibrium. That you don't have to say that women are supposed to be weak and docile and men are supposed to be overpowering. So, you know, that is, and the meaning of this swallowing the sun, it is drawn from an abhanga of a 13th century teenage woman saint. The woman saint is Muktabai, and it is her abhang which this title is drawn from, and it says Mungi udali akashi tine gille suryashi thor navalavazhala बांस पुत्र प्रसरना विंजू पाताळा सी जाय शेष माथा बंदी पाय माशी व्याली घार झाली देखूनी मुक्ताई हंसली. And the message is that even a little ant can fly into the sky and swallow the sun if she has faith, if she dares, and she perseveres. So that's the story of the characters and also of this country, India.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for talking to India TV.